Welcome to the study of the Pentateuch. Today we're going to cover the basic introductory elements in studying the book of Leviticus. The book of Leviticus is titled in Hebrew Vayikra. Literally in English is the first word in the Bible at the chapter 1, verse 1. Now he called Moses. This calling of God to Moses was surrounded by the temple environment, in the worship environment. In Latin, Leviticus is borrowing from Greek Leviticon, which means that which concerns the priest. This is kind of a manual for the priest how to conduct the worship service in their temple. And it says about the way the people approach to God, the way they worship, and how they conduct as God's people. So this is very important manual, not only for the priest, but to the general living of the Israelite in the new land. The authorship by Moses is given in Jewish tradition. As we discussed in other books, the Mosaic authorship is rarely rejected, especially in the book of Leviticus. And also there is internal evidence by the book itself. Leviticus 1:1, 4:1, and 6:1. And God said to Moses, is kind of telling the first-hand account of the event that was occurring. And then there is a Jesus affirmation of Mosaic authorship. If you read the John 5:46 and 47, it reads, Jesus respond to his own Jewish critics who questions his practices by saying, if you believe Moses, you would believe me. For he wrote about me, but since you do not believe what he wrote, how are you going to believe what I say? So this is direct affirmation of a Mosaic authorship. The message of Leviticus is this. The underlying part is kind of main theme as a subject. The proper way to live in a covenant relationship with Holy God is provided by the Lord in the means of access through the sacrifice and the priesthood and the mediated laws for living, which provide necessary directives for maintaining fellowship with God. So it's very important. Yes, it is important to have a fellowship with God, but how we do fellowshipping with God is very important to God himself too. We have to remember that the Israelite is a unique relationship with God, which is so-called the covenant relationship, the relationship only God can endorse with his own people. And in worshiping, meaning the recognizing the true value of God, the expression of that worship has to be very specific. Gordon Wenham expressed this way about the Leviticus. As Leviticus explains how covenant worship should be conducted, that is chapters 1 through 17, and then how the covenant people should behave, and closes with a section of blessings and curses, entirely appropriate to a covenant document. Indeed, the last verse of this chapter connects all that precede with Sinai, where the covenant was concluded. Now, when I say Sinai in here is the Mosaic covenant I'm referring. The Sinai covenant was at once a treaty between God and Israel and the laws imposed on the nation. Now here is a basic difference between the book of Exodus and their temple worship, and then the Leviticus is about how to worship God. In Exodus, in the last part, it's basically where and the structure of the tent of covenant, the place they built, the building and setting up a structure as a focus. But Leviticus is based on that basic structure, how to worship in that temple court. The dominant genre of the book of Leviticus is, we can say, a narrative, a kind of a story form. Moses telling about the way that Israel behaved in and outside the temple. But the content is dominantly legal. It's a legal material because it deals with the way the Israelite and the priest conduct before the Lord. The sacrificial systems in Israel, there's a little bit of difference between the Israel and ancient Near East. On the part of Israel, God established the sacrificial system to atone sins and give thanks. But in ancient pagan Near Eastern culture, the sacrifices predominantly decipher future, which is otherwise turns out to be 100% false. If not by chance, sometimes it is correct. And then on the part of God, between God and Israel, the sacrificial system is basically a covenantal bond relationship between these two parties. But in ancient Israel, in ancient Near Eastern culture, there's no covenant involved. The key idea of holiness is emphasized, especially in the book of Leviticus, in the sacrificial system. But in ancient Near Eastern culture, no such holiness is involved, and no such idea even is in its embryonic form is introduced. The structure of the book of Leviticus looks like this. There's two main parts. The first 10 chapters is dealing with the way to the Lord. Here it discusses the sacrificial systems and sacrifices and what type of animals and how they sacrifice it. And the 8 to 10 is the priest's duty and role in the temple. So it deals with the specific details in approaching to the Lord in the sacrificial system. On the other part, chapters 11 to 27, it deals with the way, the conduct of the people and the priest before the Lord. The 11 through 15 deals with the purification of the priest and the citizen. And then there are various laws relating to the daily living of the Israelites. So remember these two parts, okay? And the lesson that we get the book of Leviticus is this. First, God is holy. In the Hebrew term, the holiness is not only defines the way from sin or free from sin, but also setting apart for the specific use. God sets apart the Israelite as a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And God is teaching, especially in this setting of the book of Leviticus, that He wants to make sure how to exemplify that holiness as a set-apart citizen for His unique use. Another thing we observe is God is personal. In a personal way, He guides them, He provides them, He instructs them. So the personality, in a very unique way, individual elements we find in the book of Leviticus. So this wraps up the basic introduction of the book of Leviticus.